Hello everyone, welcome to season 3 of Audiobookish. My name's Fahed Rahman. I'm joined by Poppy Knight.
Hello.
Audiobookish is a podcast where we discuss and review audiobooks, and in this episode we're going to be listing in no particular order our favourite audiobooks of 2021. So I think it's quite a good year for audiobooks overall in 2021. I think just in terms of the quality of the audiobooks that I certainly listened to and that were released, and as well as kind of the amount of people just listening to audio as well. Okay, cool. So Poppy, do you want to get started off with like the first, not necessarily your top pick, but kind of the first book that's on your list?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think I am going to go top pick because I think for me, I do have a clear favourite of the year.
Yeah.
And it's got to be True Crime Story by Joseph Knox.
Yeah,
Loved it.
so that's kind of like my top pick as well.
Yeah! I thought it might be on your list.
Yeah. So it's you go ahead and you talk about it because it was also on my list as well, but yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll give it a bit of an introduction then. And partly, I guess, to start it off, a massive thanks to you because, firstly, if it weren't for you kind of chatting with the person from Penguin, that meant that we ended up getting codes for copies for this, I wouldn't have listened to it. And then even so, when we had the kind of list of ones to look for, I was wary of it. And if it weren't for you pushing it forward, I wouldn't have listened to it either. So huge thanks for that because it is incredible. So True Crime Story is fiction, and that was the main thing that was putting me off. I'm not massively big on, true crime podcast documentaries, that kind of thing. But this is a really meta text that claims to be true when it isn't, which I love. I've read a few like that before, and this one does it so well. It's sort of written as Joseph Knox, the author, is kind of continued the work of a woman called Evelyn, who's been researching a unsolved case of a missing girl. And she's been doing a ton of research. She's been doing interviews with the people that knew the victim. And it's a mix of transcripts from those interviews, email correspondence between her and Joseph, and some of his own musings on it in there as well. And throughout this, you're taken on not just an amazing, mystery crime story, if you're into kind of your detective stories, that kind of thing, not just amazing of that, but also such a social commentary on so many different issues. You meet some absolutely amazing characters, and all the way through it interrogates what is truth and what is true, and how do we believe people and how do we believe things. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I can't believe that this was a book first because it works so well as an audio production.
Yes.
I would say it's semi full cast production. So each character that's being interviewed in the book, their interviews are narrated by separate characters. We've got Joseph Knox, the author himself, kind of narrating sections of the book, as well as Evelyn being played by an actor performing her sections in the book. So there's so much to kind of, we discussed this book for an hour, so I don't want to take up too much of this podcast discussing it, because we could easily talk about it again for another at least half an hour, 40 minutes.
Oh, definitely. And I definitely want to follow on from that, because I do think it is an amazingly written book regardless.
Yeah.
And I think if you did decide to read the written word, you would also pick up so many amazing things from it. But yes, 1,000% agree. I think you'd be cheating yourself if you didn't listen to it. All the performances from the full cast, absolutely incredible. The sound design, brilliant. The sound from the transcripts, which in audio are now the tapes, and there's a sort of intentional light crackle where you can kind of tell it's a handheld recorder kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's not a studio room, and it's amazing. It's not in any way kind of distracting, takes you out of the story kind of quality thing. It's fully immerses you in the story because it really reflects what they would sound like. And we talked about stuff like email noises and things. It's just absolutely flawless. And yeah, really, really, definitely, as well as being an amazing story, as audio, this is one of the reasons why it is my top pick, because it really does show how amazing audio can be.
Yeah, I just kind of like, we've reviewed a fair few books last year, and
Mhm.
there were very few of them where I felt the need to kind of like WhatsApp Poppy about certain sections that I just listened to. You can go to the episode
Yeah, yeah.
where we reviewed it. It is, yeah, for me, it was by far and away the best book I listened to last year, and kind of well done, Penguin Random
Mhm.
House Audio, for producing it. They had a lot of really good books out last year.
Mhm.
Books that didn't actually make my list also included the adaptations they did for the 2000 AD graphic
Yeah,
novels,
yeah,
which were also excellent. So they're doing some really kind of top quality work. But for me, this was just a cut above the
yeah.
rest.
Definitely, definitely agree. And yeah, similarly, Slain is kind of on my, oh, it nearly made the list kind of thing, because
Yeah.
it was fantastic and incredible, and I really loved it. And to be fair, maybe it should make my list. But again, we've done an episode on that, so guys, go
Yeah.
listen to the episode on
Yeah.
Slain and hear how much we loved it. And then yeah, equally with this. With this, I think hopefully we've sold it to you enough with this little summary. And if we have, go listen to it first, and then go and listen to our episode, because we tried to be quite good with the spoilies and
Yeah.
not do any for this one, but you'll get more from our discussion, I think, if you've already listened to it. And then
Yes.
let us know what you thought about what we said,
Yeah.
because I'll happily talk about this book over and over again.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's kind of true crime story crossed off my list. I think the next pick on my list
Mhm.
is Dope Sick by Beth Macy, narrated by Beth Macy. So I think this was turned into quite a popular TV series on Disney Plus, and Beth Macy is a journalist in the United States, and it covers the story of how the opium epidemic started in the United States, and how different people and organizations have struggled to deal with it. So it kind of covers a lot of the stuff around how, the tactics Purdue Pharma
Mm.
implemented to sell OxyContin to
Mhm.
doctors, and how those doctors subsequently prescribed that drug to their patient. She interviews and talks to law enforcement. She talks to drug addicts. She talks to the parents and family members of addicts that have passed away or end up in jail. She talks to drug dealers. It's a tragedy, kind of epic in its scope. It's a book that left me deeply sad and
Mhm.
angry, because it's one of those stories that makes you kind of realize that there's absolutely no justice in this
Mm.
world, and there's kind of a lot of pain and suffering that we inflict upon ourselves. But there's also so much kindness and hope and love, and
Mm.
those are the things that we kind of need to build on and hold on to and reach out and connect to each other with. So um it left kind of a really deep impact on me.
Mhm.
It's a book that's going to make you feel kind of desolate and disappointed, but at the same time, it also reinforces kind of like the strength of individual people's humanity, in the way they kind of treat each other, and how they
Mhm.
try and innovate and create solutions so that we can move forward and live our best lives as well. So yeah, it's utterly compelling, and Beth Macy does a fantastic job of narrating her own text as well.
Wow. Yeah, no, that sounds really, really, like you say, dark and intense. But yeah, it reminds me a lot of your description reminds me a lot of No Fixed Abode that we listened to, as a kind
Yeah,
of a similar book on a different topic.
yeah,
Is what I get from that.
yeah. No spoilers yet, but might be also on my list as well.
That's
um,
very fair.
okay. What's the next book on your list?
Okay. There's really no particular order to this.
Yeah,
I think what I'll go on to next is sort of a group of three, but I don't know how I'll talk about them. But basically, it's because I'm not really much of a, or I haven't been much of a autobiography person until this year.
yeah,
We've spoken before about how I really love Trevor Noah's autobiography,
yeah,
Born a Crime, but I don't really listen to that many. And then this year, well, last year, I started with an autobiography, and listened to an autobiography in the middle, and finished the year with listening to an autobiography. So clearly something clicked. And I mean, there have been so many amazing ones, published this year, and a lot that I have on my, to be read or to be listened to, especially, has been just like almost all amazing comedians on the British circuit at the moment have had autobiographies out, and I'm really excited about almost all of them. So, keeping on the comedian theme, then we'll go with the one that I started in the middle of the year. So that was Cat Candid by Gina Yashere, and this is one where I'd just seen it about, and I recognised her face. I've seen her on stuff like Live at the Apollo, Mock the Week, that kind of thing, and always really enjoyed whatever she did. She's not one of the comedians that I've followed the most recently, though I kind of learnt through listening to her book that's probably because she's so based in the States now,
Yeah.
as to why I don't follow her as closely as kind of some other comedians and stuff. But like I say, I'd always found her really, really funny whenever I had seen her on TV. So I saw this and was like, oh yeah, I'll listen to that. And her book is absolutely amazing. So she narrates it herself. I also really love how, so when she's plugging it on like social media and stuff, the fact that she's got a book out, because obviously, plug it, definitely. I love that she always puts audio first. She says, buy the book in audio, read by me. And then also says, and, in paperback or whatever. I can't remember the exact quote that she uses, but that makes me really happy that she's put the audio first. And she reads it so well. She has a very distinctive voice, and she puts so much emotion and performance into it. It's fantastic. And then especially, so she's from a Nigerian background and does a Nigerian accent for like her mum and some other characters and things, which I think is really, important for listening to it in the book. And yeah, it's her performance is brilliant. When it comes to the content, it was so fascinating. Like I say, I didn't really know that much about her, and yet now I know so much about her. But not only so much about her, so much about Britain in the 80s, which, I was talking to my mum, like, she'd probably get a very different experience listening to it than I would, because for me, I'm very much learning about that, whereas, for someone who's lived it, it's more kind of nostalgia kind of thing. There's so much stuff about race and race during, her childhood and early 20s and stuff as well, in Britain, again, in London specifically, which again, I wouldn't know anything about.
Yeah.
And so many just amazing things that she's done with her life. She was terrified of lifts and then became a lift engineer and rode on the top of lifts for years and learned things through that. And then her journey into comedy and how that went. And one of the main things I really took from this book was about going for what you want and not playing the game, was a really kind of big thing of it. There were points in her life where she could have just done what other people said. One specifically notable one where it was about a character that she'd written, and someone said, okay, yeah, we want the character, but we want someone else to play it. And she could have just gone, yeah, okay, sure, at least I've got my script out there. But she took a risk, pushed back, and went, no, I'm playing them. And that launched an incredible opportunity for her. And a similar thing when her work was overlooking her back in engineering and being unfair, and went, you know what, I'm not playing the game. This is what I want. And that I really needed to hear, I think. And it was really, really good. And yeah, so like I say, there's some dark moments and some really funny moments. Some stuff of just like, yeah, like I say, pop culture in, a time when I wasn't alive. And all sorts of stuff, as well as just a comedian telling great stories, which I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I think that's a really high up there one on my list for this year.
Okay, that's fascinating. Kind of coming to a new genre and kind of listening to a lot. I've always find that quite exciting when you discover a new genre and new author, and you kind of go on like a spree of like
Yeah.
reading that, and it's really kind of energizing. And I'm really glad that you've kind of got into listening to
Thank
books in
you.
that genres, because it's good. It's good to
Yeah.
kind of widen your horizons. So, and yeah,
Oh, definitely.
Gina is hilarious. I do remember kind of
Yeah.
like watching, I think she did like a celebrity episode of Come Dine With Me, and I think
Oh,
at the
right.
time was only eating raw food. So like
Right.
all the food that she served, if I remember correctly, was all like dehydrated stuff, which
Okay.
I thought was like quite funny. But yeah, she's a big personality
Oh,
um
definitely. Yeah.
as well. So I think my next book, I think kind of sort of fits into kind of what you were just talking about there.
Okay.
It's Effortless by Greg McCown. Greg is a motivational speaker and a business coach, and Effortless, it's a book I listened to at the beginning of last year. I received an advanced review copy from NetGalley, so thank you to them for allowing me to review the book. And it's just his guide to how to make your life more effortless. And he talks about how to kind of like minimize the things that you're doing in your life, kind of removing things from your life, both in terms of like, so if you're kind of running a project, trying to run that project as simply as you can, so you can kind of get more done.
Mm.
And the other two themes that really kind of struck a tone with me were having the courage to be rubbish at something.
Mm.
And he really talks about prioritizing progress over perfection, and how you've got to give yourself permission to be bad at something. And there's some things that are simply worth doing badly. So it's better to kind
Mm.
of go for like a 10-minute walk, every day, rather than going to the gym once
Mhm.
every, 2 or 3 months or whatever. And yeah, just there are some things that are just worth doing badly, and just doing stuff, and, prioritizing kind of like the process and progress over trying to get things absolutely right really struck a
Mhm.
tone with me. And then the other thing that he talks about a lot is deciding what done looks like as well, in terms of don't aim for perfection, because at a certain point you're just ruining the stuff
Mm.
that you've done, and just deciding, right, this is it. Just kind of like putting it out there. And he talks a lot about his motivations for writing the book. And he's a very busy person, and he just realized that he wasn't really following his own advice, and he needed to find
Mm.
another path to kind of like be a good dad and a good business partner and all that sort of stuff. And he also talks a lot about forgiveness in the book as well, and how that's a really important tool to kind of let go of all those like nagging things. And the way he described it's kind of like, if you're holding on to like bad feelings and stuff, it's kind of like running a computer with loads of unnecessary computer programs that you're not using anymore in the background.
Mm.
And if you just shut those down, you'll have more emotional energies to put forward to like positive things. So that's another thing that kind of really struck a tone
Mhm.
with me. So it's kind of like a self-help book. I like to read at least a couple of self-help books a year, even though I don't always follow their advice. And
Yeah.
this is probably one I'll probably read again this year. So yeah.
No, that's really cool. And, there's so many important lessons in there. And yeah, things I could do to have been reminded
Yeah.
about. And it's a good thing to be reminded about them now. So yeah, and like you're saying about kind of following that advice, you or the author, that they are the kind of things that need reinforcing,
Yeah.
aren't they? It's
Yeah.
very easy to not follow them, but very good to be reminded about them for sure. Especially kind of like this time of year, beginning of the year, it's very important as well, that kind of thing about doing stuff badly and things. And often, like, if you set a New Year's resolution and then you break it, I certainly find this, if I set a habit for myself, kind of and do something every day, and I can stick to it for a bit, and then as soon as I've broken it, I've broken it.
Yeah.
It's done, Whereas actually, it's a lot better to go, okay, I missed a day when I wanted to do it every day. That's a shame, but you know what? If I do it today, that's still better than just
Yeah.
giving up on it completely.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's definitely a very important point. And then yeah, like you say about self help, another one that I haven't really fully ventured
Yeah.
into yet.
Yeah.
I work on a lot of self-help and lifestyle books actually on our lists at work, so I should get more into the genre,
Yeah.
I think, really. But yeah, maybe that's a good one to start with. And
Yeah.
it just reminded me, in flicking to what you'd said before about me, getting into new genre with autobiographies and stuff, it reminded me of many years ago. I was upper end of high school, I think, when I made this comment to a friend of mine, where I said, if it's not fiction, it's not a book, or something like that. Because that was my thought
Yeah.
process for a long time. And then kind of had my eyes open to some good non-fiction
Yeah.
stuff in a variety of contexts,
Yeah.
even like textbooks. I ended up really enjoying some good ones. But yeah, so yeah, just wanted to share that story
Yeah.
for yeah, even if you are, maybe if you're a bit like I was listening to this thinking, I'm only into fiction, stuff like this could be good. And I think the one that you spoke about is a good starting one, it sounds like.
I think we're kind of like digressing into another conversation slightly, but I remember reading I think it was an interview with Noel Gallagher, and he's like
Mm.
completely the opposite. He's I can't read
I
fiction.
feel like I saw that somewhere. Mm.
I can only read non-fiction books. That's the only thing that kind of like gets my interest in biographies and things like
Mm.
that. Like my older brother, for example, he reads very little fiction, but he
Mm.
devours history books. So it's kind
Yeah.
of really interesting how like different people are attracted to kind of
Mm.
different things. But yeah,
For sure. And
um,
how your taste can change and stuff like that
yes,
is
yeah.
good. And even if it pops up on your Facebook memories that you said that to a friend however many years ago, you don't have to worry that you don't stick by it
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I'm pretty sure he tags me in it every year when it comes
yeah,
up on his
yeah.
memories. But
It's
um,
quite good. It's quite funny.
so so yes, on that topic then, so the one I started the year with, again mentioned on one episode, but we didn't do a full talk about, was Wishful Drinking by Carrie Fisher.
Oh, I've downloaded that
Have
from my
you? Fab.
library, but I didn't listen to it in time,
Haven't
so I need to
started yet.
yeah, I haven't
Well, I
started it yet. Yeah,
recommend, and this is a
yeah,
bit of a cheeky one because this isn't really an audiobook of 2021, so I'll maybe do it a bit
yeah,
quicker. But given
yeah,
that I was talking about me getting into autobiographies this year, I thought I should mention it. And to be fair, if you're listening to it, let's do a full episode on it at some
yeah,
point.
yeah,
So everyone stay tuned for that.
yeah,
We'll do that at some point. So just, yeah, as a brief kind of introduction thing to it, as I say, a year ago when I listened to it, I'm pretty sure I downloaded it. It was either the 1st or the 2nd of January.
yeah,
So very much summing up my 2021 of
yeah,
audiobooks. And yeah, it was really, really good. It's a real mishmash. It's her talking about her life of basically being in fame. You
yeah,
know, from famous parents to then being famous from quite young, obviously in the massive Goliath that is Star Wars,
yeah,
to then just be at the height of fame forever, and kind of weird things of dolls of yourself being sold and all sorts of
yeah,
stuff, and the negative sides of fame and of her life and the positive sides of fame in her life. Really, really interesting to listen to, and fascinating stories, and an amazing storyteller. Again, she narrates, and I think I sort of said before, it was based off a one woman show that she done about it, and it definitely has that feel of you're sat in kind of the theatre with her.
yeah,
She's performing it to you, she's just talking to you, and yeah, it's really comforting. So yeah.
yeah. I think Carrie Fisher is a fascinating character because if I
Mhm.
remember correctly, I don't know if this piece of pop culture lore is true, is that she's actually was a brilliant screenwriter as well. She
I
kind of
think so.
yeah,
She's
yeah,
written fiction, she's written
yeah,
proper books
yeah,
as well
yeah,
as
yeah.
non-fiction.
So I probably do need to. I've downloaded it a couple of times from the library, but I've run out of time. Yeah, let's definitely
Yeah,
do that as a future episode at some point.
awesome.
Um,
Stay tuned, folks.
yeah. Okay, so the next book on my list is The Benefits of Being an Octopus by Anne Braden, narrated by Amy Melissa Bentley, and it's I'd say middle grade fiction book. It's about Zoe, who's very much a poor working class girl. She's a bit of an outcast at school. She lives at home with her stepfather, her mother, and a younger brother, and kind of her half brother. And it's a story that covers a lot of different themes. So, just kind of a trigger warning. I think that needs to go with this book.
Mhm.
It does talk about domestic abuse. It talks about themes of bullying, and yeah, it's one of those books where I had to kind of like stop listening to it for a bit because I
Mhm.
was afraid something bad was going to happen to the character. So, soon
Yeah.
as long as you stop listening, that the bad thing might not have
It
happened.
doesn't
So
happen,
yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't happen because I haven't listened to it yet.
Mhm.
Very much the Joey Tribbiani putting the book in the
Yeah.
freezer type mentality. Zoe, I just fell in love with her character. She was so vulnerable and wanting to be liked by people,
Mhm.
and just that sense of wanting to be included in stuff but feeling like an outsider is something that I definitely can relate to. So just kind of like her need for longing to kind of like her schoolmates. She's got a really good
Mhm.
friend who they fall out, and I felt really sad when they fell out, and
Mm.
it's just kind of like one of those things where you just want everything to kind of work out for her. So yeah, it's a brilliant book. Amy Melissa Bentley does a really fantastic job of narrating the characters,
Mm.
and kind of bringing life to it. I recommend this book really highly. I don't really usually read a lot of like middle grade
Mm.
fiction books, but this is just one that I saw available on Libby, and I thought, oh, I might as well give that a go. So yeah, that's my recommendation for that one.
Awesome, that sounds really good. I think I'll have to add that one to my list as
Yes.
well, especially because, yeah, middle grade fiction is probably one of my staple genres. So,
Yeah.
yeah, go nice in that. No, that sounds really good.
Okay, so you believe it's your next
My
book?
turn.
Yeah.
Well, I'll close off the autobiographies then. The way I closed off my year was listening to The Storyteller by Dave Grohl. So I'm hoping everyone will know this, but
Yeah.
Dave Grohl is the frontman for Foo Fighters, as well as having been the drummer for Nirvana and is the drummer for them Crooked Vultures. So yeah, and the Foo Fighters have genuinely people might find this cringe, but I'm saying this in all truthfulness, not in a cliche way, have genuinely had such an impact on my life. People that I have bonded with and at times become extremely close friends with, genuinely over the fact that we like this band. And their music has led me to other bands, and kind of my taste in rock music is, a big part of my identity. Not
Yeah.
gonna lie,
Yeah.
I know because it's not a personality, but it does influence a lot of me, a lot of what I think is me. And so yeah, in people wise, in that wise, in just so many respects, the Foo Fighters have had a really big impact on my life. And yeah, I'm really not one of those people that feels the need to learn everything about every band member of every band and that kind of thing, that a lot of people will say you're a fake fan if you don't know kind of stuff. I've just not really been that bothered. So again, despite all this, I didn't actually know all that much about Dave Grohl. But it has been really, really amazing to listen to him tell me, again, he narrates, him tell me just amazing stories from his life, all the way, childhood through to really quite recent stuff. So many stories. It's a book about family, largely. There's so much about family, predominantly about his mum, about his daughters, and also him as a father with his daughters, that is really, really lovely. And then, of course, loads of stuff about his incredible career in music, how that came about. Again, there was, like with Gina's stuff, there was taking a chance on things that was really important, and kind of how much your life can be shaped by, having the confidence to make that leap. So, yeah, just fascinating, and a really funny, entertaining guy, a really brilliant writer, You've no idea how someone who can write good song lyrics is going to translate to writing a
Yeah.
book. But no, fabulous, really good storytelling, probably hence the title. It was fantastic. It was really good. And also, I especially recommend the audio edition because he has composed and performed little bits of amazing rock music that come up kind of,
Oh,
especially in the
wicked.
when each yeah, exactly. Especially I think the main parts they come up is basically when it's split into parts. So when you get to a new part, not necessarily chapter, but when you get to a new part, you've got a bit of, you get to rock out for a little bit. So that's just amazing. As well as there's a really cute bit where he's talking about teaching his daughter to play drums. And you have some like drum beats that go on
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
There's just kind of a nice little background bit. It's certainly not overly done. There isn't a load of that. But that little bit was really clever. And yeah, the music bits, I'm sorry, I can't get enough of
Yeah.
some more Dave Grohl rock music. So yeah, definitely.
I find it really fascinating how music can bring people together like that,
Yeah.
because I know a lot of my friends, they've met some of their best mates through a mutual love for a
Mm-hmm.
particular band
Yeah.
or artist, and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this year has been quite a big year for musical biographies,
Mm,
as well. So it's and yeah, he just seems like a really nice guy.
he does.
I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like if you're a rock and roll star, you're going to go through some weird
Yeah.
and troubling times as well. But he just seems like a really solid bloke. So yes,
Yeah.
who did you mention who narrates it? Does he narrate it himself, or does
He
he?
does. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
He reads it himself and it is fabulous. And yeah, it's certainly certainly the impression that he gives off in the stories that he's a really nice guy,
Yeah.
and I see that as well. And the stuff about like how much he does prioritize his family and things like moving a show in Australia, mid Australian tour, so that he could fly back from Australia
Yeah.
to the US to take his daughters to a daddy daughter dance and then fly back to the rescheduled show in Australia. Stuff like that. And he spends most of the book fangirling about other musicians. That is
Yeah.
most of the book.
Yeah.
It's him being like, I can't believe I met this person. And stuff like that. So yeah, it's
It's
fab.
quite funny, when you listen to celebrity interviews or whatever, and they
Hmm.
mark out as fans when they meet
Hmm.
other people. So that's always quite nice as well. So I'm going to group these two books together,
Okay.
even though they're completely different,
Hmm.
because I kind of talked about them on the podcast before. So it's Witch by Finbar Hawkins, narrated by Gemma Whelan, and The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffey,
Yeah.
narrated by Ben Onwukwe and Vivian Achimapong. My apologies for the pronunciation of their names if I've got that incorrect. So Witch is a really great YA novel about a witch whose mother is kind of murdered and her quest for revenge. I think I talked about this maybe in our first or second episode or one of our catch up episodes.
Mm.
I Gemma Whelan does such a superb job of narrating it, and I think that's the reason why I've lumped these two together, because the narration really does lift the text in both these books. So
Mm.
it's a thrilling revenge thriller. And The Mermaid of Black Conch, again, the performances by both Ben
Yeah.
and Vivian were absolutely stellar.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
lifted the characters off the page, and really, the book itself is beautifully written. It's kind of sensual and romantic, and it's a fantastic. If you've not read it, go out and listen to the audiobook, because
Mhm.
both those I think are fantastic. They're both fantastic examples how having the right narrator and kind of subtle
Yeah.
sound design can
Mhm.
just lift the text and turn it into something marvelous.
Yeah, completely, completely agree. And Mermaid of Black Conch is also on my list.
Okay.
Really, just yeah, had to be spoken about. I thought it was incredible. I fully agree with what you said about the narrators being fantastic and the sounds that were added being fantastic. Little kind of guitar bits, again, some music in there that was fantastic. And I also really loved the story. So this is one where I had seen the book, both in audio and in print, advertised all over the place and kept going, oh yeah, I need to get to that. Oh yeah, I need to get to that. And not doing. And with that kind of thing, you have such a build up of expectation, don't you? I really
Yeah.
thought it would be good. And I was really, really in love basically with the original cover. And I'm really quite disappointed that they changed it.
Oh, they changed it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's even kind of talked about in the book that it's very much not like a Disney mermaid sort of feel,
Yeah, I mean,
and
she's
yet that's
kind
what
of
I
like,
feel like the new cover is,
yeah, like
unfortunately.
the mermaid in this is very much, I was gonna say monstrous, but kind of like it's
No.
not like, it's
Yeah,
not
it's
like it's
very much more realistic, I
yeah,
guess. It's
yeah,
less like glamorized and cutesified and all that. It is a woman with a fish tail.
yeah,
That's what it is. It's really real in
yeah,
that sense, and yeah, a much much grittier thing than you have with kind of you know Pretty Mermaid
yeah, yeah,
thing. Which unfortunately, yeah, apologies to people working on it, but I do think that's what the new cover
yeah,
does. Whereas the old cover is what grabbed me and what made me go, I want this
yeah,
instantly. And it lived up to all those expectations that I had of it. I think it is fantastic. I haven't listened to it the once so far, but I definitely think I'll be listening to it again
yeah,
multiple times. It's a fantastic story, really gripping, as you say, brilliantly told, really well written. Yeah, if you want to know more about it, we did a full episode
yeah,
on this one.
yeah,
So yeah,
and
have a listen.
it's maybe got one of my favorite villains of last year
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll mention No Fixed Abode
Mm.
by Maeve McGlenigan. So I think, especially with everything that's going on at the moment, so we're recording this in early January 2022.
Mhm.
It's kind of still a trash fire at the moment in terms of what our government is doing.
Mhm.
And so this is, yes, no fixed abode. We did an episode about this. It's a non-fiction book about the homelessness crisis in the UK and how it's basically been manufactured by government policy,
Mhm.
and how if there was a political will, this is something, while extremely difficult to tackle, something that we could be doing a much better job, as a society, as individuals, as a
Mm.
society, and certainly at the local governmental and national governmental level.
Mhm.
And I think it's just kind of reflected really with what's happening with the current government that we're in at the moment, where kind of where their priorities kind of are. So maybe this is a little bit kind of, if you listen to this 20 years in the future, not really understanding. Oh, that's
Let's
quite big
hope.
ego. Yeah, big ego of me, someone listening to this 20 years in the future. But yeah, it kind of, it just goes to show, if a government's got the right priorities, things can be tackled a lot better than they are at the moment. So that's another one of my picks as well.
Mhm. No, I think that's a very good call to make, and I mean, I enjoyed most of. I really loved most of the books that we reviewed
Yeah,
so far, and yeah, definitely this one again. Not something I would normally pick up,
yeah,
and kind of, as discussed, fun-loving fiction is more
yeah, yeah,
more my speed than the kind of thing that makes you realize some of the shittiness of the world. But
yeah,
having said that, I am very glad I listened to it,
yeah,
as I said before. So yeah, definitely a good
yeah,
pick.
yeah. What's the next one on your list?
Okay, so again, we have spoken about it, but I think it's worth mentioning, and I'm pretty sure that the final season did come out in 2021, so I'm therefore saying
Yeah,
it definitely counts.
yeah.
So this is, of course, Guthrum.
Oh,
And
okay, yeah, yeah,
oh, were
yeah,
you
yeah,
thinking I
yeah,
was thinking a
yeah, yeah,
different one?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't really. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah,
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 yeah, it was absolutely just amazing. So, radio drama, this was our kind of audiobook-ish
yeah,
audiobook
yeah,
that we did, and yeah, it's just it's so good. So it's based on Icelandic sagas, but rewritten
yeah,
and remodeled, and just yeah, really. We go listen to the episode. It's
yeah,
good.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how to summarize it.
yeah.
It's
It's difficult. I mean, it's about Gundren and
mhm.
how do you it's about okay. How do you summarize it? It's about
So
Gundren.
it's like it's a Viking saga
Yeah,
that it's based on, and you have all sorts of intertwined things. The lead is female, and you have things about how societal expectations and marriage and things work in that. And certainly at the start of it, it is very much that kind of thing. It moves into being much more action based. There is murder and betrayal and sea travel and adventure.
and
And
political intrigue, and
yes,
yeah, and all this sort of stuff.
definitely,
Yeah,
there's so much talk about religion and belief. You have the believers in the old Norse gods. You have the
Christians.
invasion
Yeah,
of the Christian missionaries into Iceland, and a commentary on what that did, but also a commentary on what belief and faith are, regardless of the deities it is that you're believing in. It is a really interesting part, as well as it being really interesting because it has Norse mythology in there and how cool that is. Really well written, definitely, amazingly well performed, and produced with the sound and things as well. So beautifully paced. We talked about
yeah,
that as well, just as you're listening to it in general, but also the fact that it's split into those 15-minute chunks that either follow on seamlessly without you noticing, or you go, I've only got 15 minutes, but I can still go on an amazing journey in that
yeah,
15, that feels complete, but also like it's part of a bigger thing. Yeah, just fab. And the fact that it's available for free on BBC Sounds is a big old bonus. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, yeah. I'm really glad that kind of a book that I'd say book, something that I've introduced you to, you
Yeah, I
enjoyed
mean,
so
yeah,
much.
huge
That's really
thanks to you
nice.
for that. I love
Yeah.
it.
So the last book on my list is Confident Women by Tori Telfer, narrated by Jamie Lamchick, and it's kind of a historical listicle book about women that have carried out confidence tricks uh, in the
Mm.
world. So there's kind of a long list of women in the book that have either made fame and fortune by basically conning
Mhm.
people. So it's some of the women sound quite charming and what's the word that I'm kind of looking for? Kind of like lovable rogue type
Right, yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah.
and then they're just some of the women are absolutely evil and conniving and awful. So it's just kind of fascinating how societal pressures force women to kind of take paths that don't really allow them to kind of use their full set of skills. The story that I found kind of most fascinating was about a Chinese socialite that basically carried out a massive Ponzi scheme
Mm.
to basically secure the heart of an Olympic athlete.
Okay.
And it's yeah, so it's kind of like she absolutely ruthlessly pursues this man.
Mhm.
It's not entirely clear if that's out of love or just out of the fact that she wants to kind of like climb the social ladder. So
Mm.
it's a fascinating look at how women can use their feminine wiles and their
Mm.
intelligence to kind of make fools of men,
Mhm.
and how that can either come to be to their benefit or detriment
Mm.
as society judges it. So yeah, so it's a really fun romp through kind of like different historical periods and women's lives.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And
Yeah.
we've definitely spoken before how, a heist story or like a con story is another big tick for me. I
Yeah.
love heist stuff. Basically, if you tell me it's got heist stuff in it, I
Yeah.
will be
Yeah.
watching, listening to it, reading it, whatever. So yeah, the the Rick and Morty heist con episode where they take the piss out of heist plots is one of the funniest things ever. And in that sense of like, you can only really parody slash enjoy parody if you love it.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does take the piss, but I love it so much. But yeah, and some amazing TV shows and stuff, Hustle, things like that have got amazing female characters in as well, though yeah, they don't get as much of the focus in a lot of mainstream stuff, and
Yeah.
that sounds like that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, some of the women I'd heard of previously because like one of my favorite podcasts is The Dollop, and
Mm.
some of the women mentioned in the book are also mentioned
Okay.
in The Dollop. I mean, yeah, so if you're kind of interested in American history, some of these characters might be familiar to you already, but
Mm.
yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Oh, that is super cool. And on kind of the non-fiction side, one of my favorite books is Catch Me If You Can, which is a film with Leonardo DiCaprio has been adapted to, but reading the book is really interesting as well. I imagine it must be an audio. I've read it in print, but
Yeah,
I should have a look at that actually. But I fully recommend that because that is really, really good. And if you do like the film, then definitely read it because it's so interesting as well, seeing like what they've decided to change
oh, okay,
from it, because it is very much based on it. So kind of the main thing is counter to what you've said. A lot of the women in his actual life become one woman in the film,
oh, okay, yeah,
reduced to one woman, but more just for time constraints or
yeah,
anything like that, I think. But it's a fascinating book, and yeah, despite how much high stuff I love, I sort of again more on the fiction side, but that is actual non-fiction of his life and how he pretended he had a zillion different careers: pilot, doctor, all sorts of stuff,
yeah.
forged so many things, and just an incredible story.
Yeah, I think Catch Me If You Can is like for me, it's one of those movies. If I catch it on TV at whatever point it's on, I need to kind of finish watching it all
Nice,
the way
yeah,
through.
it's so good, isn't it?
It's such a good
Oh,
film.
I love it.
It
I
is
got obsessed after I watched it the first time. And yeah, I got the book. I listened to the songs from the musical. I bought them. I got the score book for them. I had I think it must have been either my birthday or my Christmas after we first watched it.
yeah,
That basically I had a theme of Catch Me If You Can related stuff. So I'm glad that you also like
yeah.
it.
I think it's. Is it? We're going well off topic now. Is it a
Yeah,
Christmas
this wasn't
movie?
2021
Yeah,
at all,
yeah,
but
yeah. Is it a Christmas movie? I feel like it's like a Christmas movie.
there's a
Um,
Christmas bit. There's certainly in
yeah,
the musical because I've listened to it a
yeah,
lot. If someone wants to make, a film version of the musical, please do because I would watch it. Because I've never been able to go to the stage thing, and I think it might be a while
yeah,
before sitting in public audiences again feels
yeah.
safe. But and I'd probably want to watch it over and over again. But
Yeah.
the score for the musical is brilliant,
Okay,
and there's definitely a Christmas song in that. Christmas is
okay.
my favorite time of year, it's called. So I assume there is a Christmas scene in the film, but it has been too long since I watched it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
might need
It's
to
a
go watch that
yeah,
again.
yeah. Okay, cool. So that's all the books on my list. Is there any books left
Mhm.
on your list?
I do worry about just reeling them all off,
Yeah,
and especially, the ones that we've talked about,
yeah,
barring one rather clear exception,
yeah,
I have really enjoyed. So, yeah, have a look through. If you're wondering for other
yeah,
recommendations, have a look through what we've reviewed, and you're pretty much guaranteed to hit something that we thought was really good.
yeah,
And yeah, just one thing I wanted to say, because since us starting this podcast,
yeah,
me starting a job in publishing is super exciting, and in audiobook publishing specifically. And because of obviously how publishing works, we work quite far ahead.
yeah,
So most of the stuff I've worked on did not come out in 2021.
yeah,
So I can't put it on this list.
yeah.
But there is some stuff that I worked on, and one book was The Bears Water Picnic and Other Stories, which is a collection of stories by John Yeoman and Quentin Blake. And that was narrated by Hugh Dennis. And I remember being so excited when we cast Hugh Dennis. And it's one of the first audiobooks that I've actually had something to do with it getting created. And I had a decent amount in this one to do with getting created. Like, I'm not meaning I had
Yeah,
a massive impact on it. I'm just meaning I spent a lot of time
yeah.
doing stuff for it. So yeah, that one definitely has a special place in my heart for 2021. And Hugh did an amazing job of narrating it. It's got some great sound design in it as well, kind of especially adapting some of Quentin's illustrations into audio. Not the easiest thing to do at all.
Yes, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a really fun listen. Hugh does absolutely incredible job, as you would expect, and some nice stories in there. A real range of stories. You've got like from a rhyme about the alphabet to a chapter book kind of thing, and some interesting themes as well. A lot about animal rights kind of theme
Oh,
goes through
okay.
it quite a bit, and as well a huge range of timescales. You've got books from 1969 and books from the early 2000s and stuff. There's a real range of stuff, and a kind of range of age ranges that kids can enjoy. And yeah, so that gets a little honorable mention, largely because of the personal connection with me.
Okay,
So yeah.
cool. When was that published? Was that published last year, or is it coming out
It
soon?
was.
Yeah.
It's allowed to be
Yeah, yeah.
in this podcast. It was. It was December last year.
Okay, that's great. So, yeah,
So
congratulations on that. Actually, it's
thank you.
uh, like getting a job in publishing is not easy by any means, and
Mm.
working on a project. If anyone's on that publishing Twitter at the moment, there's a lot of people moaning about kind of like the sort of books they're having to work on. So it's just nice to work on a project
Mm.
where you've enjoyed
Yeah.
enjoyed the process. I think
Oh,
that's always
definitely.
really
And like,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, so especially one of the books in it is Mrs. Armitage, Queen of the Road, and that is one of the standout ones that I remember from my childhood. So that's really nice. And it was also nice speaking to the producer that did the sound design on it, and him saying how it was so nice to work on books that he'd like read with his own kids and stuff
Oh,
like
that's
that.
lovely.
So yeah, it was
Yeah.
really sweet.
Okay, cool. So I think that's all the books from my list. That's all the books from Poppy's list.
Hmm.
This is the first episode, guys. That's the first episode kind of done. I just want to say thank you to everyone that's listened to us. I hope you can
Hmm.
continue listening to us. If you want to get in touch, you can do that by social media via Audiobookish on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to get in touch with us by email, it's by audiobookishpod@gmail.com. Please donate via the tip jar in the episode link. Please share and subscribe and leave a review and rating wherever you're listening to it. It just helps other people discover the pod. And if you've got any recommendations, please
Hmm.
send us those through. We're kind of like open. We haven't got like a full list of books that we're going to be reviewing yet.
Yeah.
So if you've got any books that you think we should definitely check out, then do send us that through. Any
Yeah,
closing
definitely.
any closing words, Poppy?
Sort of coming off the back of that, if there's any of the books that we've mentioned today that we haven't already got a podcast episode on, let us know. I'm sure the one of us that hasn't listened to it can listen to it and chat about it if you want more on any of these. I hope that our little summaries and, blushings over them have encouraged you to take a listen to some of these and that you really enjoy.
And these end of the year lists are so is. I think I left about 3 or 4 books off my list because I didn't
it's
want
painful.
it's hard to make these decisions. I did from the other podcast C3 panel, and I left about like 10 books off that list because I just needed to. These are just the ones that we could fit into this episode, really. So thank you so much, guys. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Awesome. Ta-ra.
See ya. Bye.